Okay, we have a fun class today. We are going to be practicing, and Regan has, well, I'll wait just a minute because I'm going to go over listening first. Regan has volunteered to be, for all intents and purposes, our test dummy. So this doesn't go without saying, maybe it should, but whatever is revealed, whatever is shared, what we are all learning to do is to listen, to be compassionate, to be interested, and this is a good opportunity for you all to begin practicing the kind of confidentiality. Of course, confidentiality can never be guaranteed in a group this big. It's actually really important that we don't promise our clients confidentiality when we can't guarantee it, because we can't control other people. But I ask you guys all to be very mindful and respectful. And there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law, right? And the letter of the law is, right, we don't talk about other people when we have their confidential information. But I think what's more important than that, right, and as we hear Christ saying today, you know, there's a lot more important things than just lip service and than just doing the actions. We also have to cultivate that spirit in our hearts. So I think it's really important. One of the skills that you guys can begin building is that there's a certain emotional respect that you have for someone when they share. And so it's not just like, oh, I can't talk about this person's information, but it actually goes something further than that. Something that I say to the beginning, in the beginning stages of therapy, almost always in the first session, is that I love being a therapist. And one of the reasons that I love being a therapist is because I get to listen to people's stories. And I have a professional obligation to uphold confidentiality and privacy and keep their stories safe and private. But on a personal level, I have an honor and a love for being able to hear the different experiences, the different vignettes, the different things that have happened that have brought people to where they are. Therapy is weird and bizarre. This is one of the other things I say, right? We go through all our life being told, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. And then, oh, you have a problem? Go into this small closed room and talk to a stranger about it. That's pretty bizarre. And so one of the other things I say always at the beginning of therapy is that this is a real relationship. And trust is something that I don't expect you to give me. It's something that I hope to earn. It's not something that you owe me right off the bat. This is a real relationship, and just like any other relationship, we want to recognize that it's going to begin and it's going to unfold naturally and organically. And if we don't treat it as such, we'll be missing out and letting the client down in their expectations. So my hope today in the practice with Regan is to talk, really kind of to display two different things. And that's these listening skills, which I hope you guys all had a chance to read the packet. If you guys couldn't tell pretty quickly, this is a packet that's designed for couples and couples therapy. So I hope you guys didn't get weirded out reading about talking to your partner and saying, baby, I love you. You know, you guys are not expected to say that to your clients, nor to each other today. But I think this packet, more than anything else I've really found, gives a really short, sweet, small, succinct, and clear description of what it means to listen. And so our really the intention here as we're listening is just to understand. One of the issues that we'll run into as therapists a lot is that somebody will say something and will want to jump in and say, well, you could do this, or you could do that, or you could do that. And many of you probably do that right now, right? Many of you are probably going into the therapy profession because you're pretty good at helping people with their problems because you've probably been unfortunately put in that situation over and over again, and you've learned to be good at it. Now, that's probably one of your strengths now. You've adapted well. But one of the things about being a therapist is relearning what's actually helpful. And so the key in all of our work at all times is empathy before influence. Empathy before influence. If you don't understand, it is going to be problematic for you to try to solve. And so the majority of what we do as therapists and clinicians is simply listen. Understand their world from their perspective. And only then, once you actually understand their perspective, will you actually have any sway, right? We are very defensive when people tell us to do something. We're like, you don't know me, you don't know what I've been through, right? That's something that whether it's in movies or shows or ourselves have felt, we experience very viscerally when somebody tries to come into our lives and meddle. And it's like, and we're right to have that distrust when people do that, because it's like, hey, you don't know my ecology. You don't know the ecosystem of my life, of my heart, of my soul. Like, you don't know what these different mechanisms, these different emotional things do for me, how they provide me safety. You don't come in and meddle. And so we're not meddling, as so many people have problematically done for our clients in the past. We're sitting down, we're saying, we have the time, and we have the space. It's clear that there's something going on right now that you don't understand. So maybe if you can explain to me, we can work together and we can help you understand how this makes sense. Whatever it is that this is, your reaction, your difficulty. The thing that happened that caused the difficulty might not make sense. There's many things in life that don't make sense, but whatever your reactions to it, that's what causes us the emotional issues. It's not what happens in our lives. It's our relationship to what happens. It's how we interpret what happens. And in order to understand how people interpret what happens, we have to understand them. And so please be thoughtful and respectful. I want to show you guys how to listen. The second thing is I want to really illustrate the process dimension without being forceful or without trying to make something happen. One of the things you'll find when you start working as a therapist, when you get into therapy, is that in training, when you watch videos, when you watch tapes, even maybe when you watch role plays of your professors, it can feel like therapy sessions are just like boom, boom, psh, insight, like, whoa, I never knew that before. And it's true that there's some sessions that are like that, and maybe those are the ones that kind of feel good. A lot of therapy sessions aren't. Probably the majority of the therapy sessions aren't this like huge shift. And this is really frustrating to people, but one of the analogies that I use a lot of times is that what we can think is that we're kind of mining for coal, right? We're like digging into the mountain, or not coal, gold, because people like that a lot better than coal. We're mining into the mountain and digging for gold. We're digging for gold. We're digging for gold. And we can dig up like that final, a bucket of dirt and wheel it out and be like, I just keep digging and I don't get anywhere. I haven't gotten anywhere at all, right? Because we don't see the product that we want. But on the next time we put the shovel in, right, we get this little piece of gold and we're like elated. And what's so important is that we help our clients to realize that every successive dig without any dirt in it, every bucket of dirt that you hauled out was just as vitally important to getting this piece of gold as the last one that brought that forward, right? And then we find that speck of gold and we say, okay, we're going in the right direction, and we go further. And what we have to really help people see is that we need to value the process over the progress. If you get the process right, the progress will come naturally. If you emphasize the progress over the process, you will burn out. So I'm hoping to display a little bit of the process dimension here, probably by talking with Regan a little bit about what it will be like for her to be sitting up here with you guys, or sitting up here with me in front of you guys. The process dimension is saying, hey, can we talk about what's happening here and now in the interaction? And so we will explore that together a little bit and see what that's like. And the key here again is that there's a difference in vulnerability between information vulnerability and experience vulnerability. There's a difference between talking about kind of airing our dirty laundry, or talking about all the people and their names who have hurt us in the past and all the bad things that we've done in this list of all these issues, people would experience that as, oh, I'm being very vulnerable because I'm being open. But you can tell everybody every fact of your life and not be vulnerable at all. Now, on the other hand, if you do something, if you're actually opening yourself up, even if you're not sharing something specifically, that's vulnerable and that's scary. And we develop defenses to keep us safe from that. So we'll just explore a little bit some process. I'll show you guys, especially more so than maybe diving into the process, how I kind of bring up process, how we explore process together, hopefully in a way that's organic, that doesn't feel super weird. Or if it feels weird, we just explore that together. And then the second half of class, what we will do is you guys will pair up, and you guys will do what's called a stress-reducing conversation, which is essentially just following this packet and having a conversation about one of these topics. And the goal there is for you guys to practice these listening, reflecting skills. It's to practice the techniques through which you come to understand the other person. Are there, yes?
Are we talking about something about ourselves with our partner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but it should be something real. It should be something that you're angry about, something that you're frustrated about, something that you're confused about. And the goal is that your partner is just trying to understand you more. But we'll cover that a little bit right before we do that as well. Yeah, good question. For you guys in the back, if you would like to scoot your chairs forward, if you have any trouble hearing, please do so. And then, Regan, if you're ready. Well, ready or not, I guess. You could tell me if you weren't ready. But here we are. Yeah. So there you go. And could I be on that side, please,
Yeah,
just so that I can see the clock? Yep. We can get a nice, safe, close but not too close proximity. Yeah.
It's like a
How's
talk
it?
show.
It is like a talk show. Welcome to Therapy with John Paul and Regan. One of the first things that can you press this button right here, that record button?
Yes.
That one. Yep, just press it. Just once.
Oh, do I have to turn on the power button?
Yeah. That is weird. Here, you can just pull it off and let me see. You can just literally like yank it off.
Thank you.
So again, if you guys in the back can't hear, please feel free to move forward. We'll go for about a half hour. How does that sound?
Okay.
Yeah, all right, welcome. So one of the things we've talked about is like one of the most important questions to ask is, what's it like for you to be here?
Well, currently in front of the class, it's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of the anxiety in my body, but also I'm trying to focus on like moving past that more.
Yeah.
Because like obviously, just because you're anxious about something doesn't mean that that reflects reality or like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So the anxiety is kind of showing up in your body, and I hear this part of you, right, that's feeling nervous, feeling a little bit anxious about being here in front of the class, and this other part of you that's kind of like, okay, just like move past, like we just got to move past. That part of you that's kind of saying like move past. What's it afraid would happen if you let the anxiety show up here?
well, I think if I let the anxiety show up, it's more like I believe it's irrational because obviously like I'm not in danger at the moment.
Yeah.
Like realistically, like even if I was to like freak out right now, like there's nothing that would necessarily bad happen to me. So like it would be kind of like irrational to freak out at this moment. Even if it would be understandable, I don't think like it would just kind of like I guess show weakness in a sense. Not that it's bad to be anxious because that's human.
Yeah.
Especially when being in like large social situations like this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Feels like there's a lot happening for you right now. And it makes total sense to me, right? You're here in front of your peers. We can feel like there's a lot of pressure on, right? Certain parts of us, and we can feel like, yes, I'm ready to do this. I can do this. And then when we're in the moment, feeling overwhelmed, and it sounds like there's this part of you that's like, this is safe, this is okay. That overwhelm is irrational. But I wonder if that overwhelm might also be actually telling you something valuable and important here.
Yeah. I mean,
Like, is this, let's be honest here, is this a totally safe space for you?
I guess in a sense, like, not necessarily, because most of the people I don't know
Yeah.
exactly. I guess there's a part of me that just wants to, like, move past this, like, notion that, like, I need to care about what any of these people, like, actually believe about
Yeah.
me. Because, like, separate myself from their opinions and from, like, whatever, like, I exhibit, like, how they perceive that.
Yeah.
Because this is not necessarily a safe space.
It isn't.
Yeah. Which, tells me that I should, like, hold myself back and be less vulnerable.
Yeah.
But also that's the whole point of, like, this, like, exhibition is for me to be vulnerable
Yeah.
within a certain, like, bounds, obviously.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Yeah, well, I want you to know that here and now, even though this is a role play, and I hope that the class can get something valuable from it, to the degree that's possible, I don't want you to feel like you have to put on a performance, because you don't. And I don't want you to feel like you have to ignore these parts of you that are saying, like, hey, this is a little dangerous, because it actually is, right? Even if it was just me and you talking, right? This is a little bit threatening, because all of a sudden the dynamic's shifting, and you don't really know, hey, how do I relate to this person? He's my professor, I had him last year, like, is this gonna affect my grade? Is this, whatever, is it gonna affect the way, in the back of his mind, whatever it might be, like, there's all this that's showing up here. I would love to just call that for what it is. I would like to call this situation for what it is and saying, like, Regan, this is a risk. This part of you that is feeling anxious is saying, hey, this is a risk and it's not okay. Now, I don't want that part of you to take over either and say, like, shut it all down, like, we're not talking, like, or feel like, but nor do I want you to feel like this part of you is like, I gotta push past my anxiety so I can show up and do the right thing. Like, I want, and I think what would be most helpful for you, what I think would be most helpful here, is if we could help you in a way that feels good for these different parts of you, these different feelings, to explore what would act, like, these parts of you that are saying, like, hey, this is a little bit threatening. I think they're right. Now, it sounds like what they want you to do is, like, shut down. Well, I don't want that for you either, because I don't think you would feel very good about that. But I would like to learn, hey, could we listen to the valuable things that these parts of you have to say, and find something that actually would feel, not just something to talk about, but a way of relating that would feel appropriately vulnerable, right? Something that you could share with, or a way that you could share with the class, but not be completely naked. And at the same time, like, something that's meaningful.
Yeah.
What's, I know I just asked that question, and I know I can do this sometimes, so maybe it'd be frustrating, but it seemed like something was kind of shifting here, just as you're, like, talking now, and I wonder what's happening interiorly for you here.
I think throughout that conversation, I felt myself get a little, like, less, like, tense about it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just because I'm getting used to being up here.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I feel like a lot of the times I feel the need to, like, put up, like, whatever to, like, shield myself from that anxiety, because I have certain responsibilities that I need to fulfill,
Yeah.
And, like, I'm coming here to, like, do work and do school, so I need to, like, fulfill those responsibilities as a person. But, yeah, like, also, like, just listening to my inner voice, I guess, is also important, which I don't normally do most of the time.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think both of these are your inner voice, but they're competing, and you're feeling a tension here. It sounds like this part of you that's feeling anxious is scared of what would happen if you showed up in a certain way. This other part of you is kind of like, quiet down, like, let's just do the work. I need to show up. I need to do my responsibilities. But it sounds like this is the part of you that kind of drives the ship most of the time. This is the part of you that's mostly in the driver's seat. Could we give that a little bit of attention? That part of you that's saying, like, hey, you gotta do. What stuck out to me is, as you said, like, you have these responsibilities that, like, you do need to perform. You do need to show up for. Where do you feel that part of you kind of showing up in your body? Like when you're in that place where you're kind of saying, I got to do this thing, I kind of got to just push through, I got to make it happen. Where do you notice the tension? Or where do you notice sensation in your body?
I noticed it mostly in my lungs. Like I get like
Yeah.
a tightness there.
Yeah.
As well as I tend to get like a tension headache.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just tend to tend to not exactly like physically, but I feel like within my lungs and stuff, and I just like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that part of you could speak, what would it say? If that part of you could just be unfiltered and say whatever it has to say, what would that part of you say?
I don't have the what's the word? I don't have the flexibility to be constantly anxious and listening to my emotions and feelings. Like I am meant to. I need to get my degree done. I need to go through my classes. I need to finish it so I can get a stable job and I can be, do that financial stuff. Like obviously there are appropriate places to express those, but that's like in therapy, like formally. Other than that, like I shouldn't be expressing those things like overtly publicly because it's not respectable and I don't think it's appropriate for the most part. And I don't ever want to like burden other people with those kinds of things. Mostly because like it's just not appropriate for me to do so,
Yeah. I felt so moved as you said, I don't have the flexibility to listen to those feelings. Like, and I could hear as you said that, I don't have the flexibility to listen to those feelings. I don't have the flexibility to listen to that inner voice. It's just such a pain. Such a hurt. And I don't want to ignore that. I also hear this part of you that's saying, after you said that, I hear this part of you kind of speaking to, maybe pulling back a little bit and saying like, it's not fair for me to burden people. It's not fair for me to share these things with other people or to let other people into this part of my life, or whether it's me or our classmates here, colleagues. I'm really appreciating that you're allowing yourself right now with me here, with us, to be on that edge. Both saying like, okay, I'm able to voice some of these deeper feelings. I'm able to feel some of the emotion emerging. I can see it feeling you. I can see you feeling it. Or it feeling you. What is the difference? I don't know with emotions. It can go both ways. I can also hear this part saying like, I don't want to burden other people, or they don't deserve to be let in. Can you tell me a little bit about that? You said they don't deserve to be let in.
Because it's more so like, it just, like, I don't know how to explain this exactly, but it's like, they don't deserve to have the, like, obligation towards me to, like, deal with my emotional state or, like, what I might need. Like, my emotional needs are nobody's responsibility but my own. And, like, so if I, like, allow people to like be in that certain way, I don't want them to feel obligated towards me. Yeah. In that sense, like.
It would feel like you were burdening them.
Yeah, and I just don't think that's necessarily fair.
Yeah.
Which is like funny because like the other way around, like I'm totally fine with hearing people's problems. Like okay, cool, whatever. But with me, I just feel like I never want someone to feel like they're obligated to like stick around with me or like.
Yeah.
Tend to me just because I may like have like certain emotional needs or like mental whatevers. Yeah.
There's something else going on for you?
I'm like trying to like word it correctly. It's like
you don't have to get it perfect. I can hear that part of you like trying to nail it.
Actually, everything I say has to be perfect and completely encapsulate everything I mean at all times constantly, or else I fail and I die.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how that works.
Yeah. Where's that part of you live?
I think it mostly lives in my head.
Yeah.
Which, as it does.
Yeah. And on the one hand, it's so easy to laugh off. And on the one hand, it's something that kind of everybody laughs off about themselves, and at the other hand, it's like, man, what a tyrant that part is, you know, holding us to these standards that are impossible to meet, and then kicking us in the gut when we're down.
Yeah, I've always had this like thing where like I'm terrified of being like, it's like I don't want to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to say something and then people be able to take it out of context or like twist it in some way.
Yeah.
So like I've always been very careful about the things that I say about myself in a certain way, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so tell me, like, what is this like for you right now?
Well, I'm getting a little like about it.
Getting a little, and what is that?
I guess it's like, oh, like I'm tearing up. She's like, womp womp. But it's like.
Tell me that. What's that?
Womp.
Tell me. Bring me in on that party.
I think it's a part of me that's like kind of like it's reacting to like whatever we're talking about, so like the vulnerability and like realizing those part of myself, which like I consider myself to like know myself pretty well.
Yeah.
But like I guess talking about it in this setting is like more emotional for me.
Yeah.
And I mean normally I just push things off with like saying like I mean like the womp womp whatever, like, you know.
I don't know. Tell me more. So I'm hearing this sense of like having a deep self-knowledge, but also something feeling different here about the way that you're relating to it. No, yeah, help me understand that more. I didn't quite get that.
I think it's like being like so like open about it, but like you not letting it just be analytical, because I think like I'm able to talk about like my mental state and that kind of stuff in a very like analytical, like I can whatever, but I think like having it constantly being brought back to like how I'm feeling is like, well, I might already like know these things and recognize these things. I'm just interacting with them in a new way.
They're all, you can talk about them, but
I can,
they're packaged up in a box in a U-Haul in a unit that's far away. And you threw the key into the Ohio River.
Everything's stored away like blah blah blah.
Yeah, and here we're just like.
I'm like, close it.
Yeah, close it.
Don't go away.
Get down. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you've taken like a lot of risks here. And also it's sounding like, it feels weird to you that these things have been so accessible, so easy for you to talk about, so easy for you to know about, and yet now we're talking about them and they feel potent and scary and supercharged, and it sounds like there's a part of you that's kind of like, what the hell? Like, I know myself well, I know where these things are, and now we're talking about it, and it's like, I'm starting to cry, like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's that separation of like vulnerability of content and like experience, which I find that I'm very good at being open about myself. Like I can yap about everything for like whatever, but like it's different like allowing people to be there when I'm like engaging with it, you know?
Yeah, it
in a
is.
different way.
It is. And so it is different right now, the way you're sharing. What's the fear?
I guess it's the fear of like, I guess it shows weakness. It shows like part of it is like these things do affect me. They're not just like something I can joke about or something that I can like dissect and be like, this is what this is. But it's something that like actually affects me, so it's able to be used against me in a sense. And also it might be like something where it's like too much for other people, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think if I just describe it, then it feels far off, and it's not as like something that like, you know, like, oh, this is like overwhelming. It feels like something I can manage more, and something that I can like keep in its own little box and like I'm fine.
You can talk about it, but you don't have to touch it.
Yeah. And I think that if I engage with it in this way, in like front of other people, then I think it portrays me as not having my stuff as together as I
Yeah.
want.
Weak.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
It
said
make-
that word
it-
weakness.
It makes me look weak, manipulatable.
Manipulatable.
Yeah.
That's scary. Yeah, I heard earlier as you were speaking, you said that fear of weakness, and yeah, I can just hear and feel. I mean, there's so much packed into that word. What that word is meant for you, what you've heard that word to mean, or how it's been, whether it's been something that's been told you, or whether it's been something that you've kind of put the puzzle pieces together. Like earlier, you said that word, and it just stuck out to me in here. Like weak equals manipulatable, and that is dangerous. Like that is scary. That is threatening. It's like this part of you that's saying it's not safe to be in a position where other people can easily manipulate me. That part has some real validity to it. You know, and I get the sense that just as you were speaking at the beginning of our conversation, that there's this part of you that's kind of like push that aside, like, so we can go to the stuff, you know, and it sounds like there's a part of you maybe that showed up here today with like the agenda, as many of these different parts, these different feelings do, to be vulnerable and talk about the vulnerable things, but in the way that you've been doing so for so long, which is to kind of like have them in boxes and talk about the boxes, and I can be like, that's crazy, I'm sad, but I don't have to touch it. And we're doing something really different today. But as we're doing this differently, and you're taking this risk, and you're very courageously allowing people to see you. You're very courageously allowing me to be with you. You're actually trusting me here. This is real. We are doing a class demonstration, and this is also real. And one doesn't negate the other. We could let that happen. We could kind of make mental and emotional rules that are like, well, this isn't really happening, you know, and we'll just put this in a box too. But I hope we don't have to. I'm just really appreciating the courage, the willingness to say the thing, the willingness to trust, the willingness to be open. And I would be so angry and upset. I would be pissed off, and I would like flip tables if something from this experience felt like was manipulated. Like that would piss me off. And I feel very defensive, very protective of this classroom and of this space and of you and of your willingness to share. And I want you to know that. But I also hear, as you're talking about being manipulatable, times when that's happened. You know, and we don't need to go into those boxes. And really, I want you to know too, Regan, there's no boxes here that we need to go into. Like, I really, really mean that. There's no performance that you need to make. My hope is that you, as you have been doing, just show up. And that we go from there as we're doing here. But my sense is that weakness and manipulatability comes from a time when you were very weak and you were very manipulatable. But I wonder if that part of you knows who you are now. And I wonder if that part of you can see, and I hope that part of you can see what I can see, which is a woman who is absolutely courageous, who's willing to trust and evaluate that this feels like a safe enough situation to do the very thing that is the no-no, like to break the rule, to do the very thing which is to open up and let people see you authentically, which feels like an absolute don't do it, but you're allowing to happen here because it feels safe enough. I see a courage. I see and hear parts of you that want to be fiercely protective of that vulnerability. I see and hear parts of you that have learned, like, hey, we're going to keep safe, like no matter what. Like we're gonna make this happen. Like whether it's going right and laughing it off, whether it's learning to engage with self-awareness while also keeping things a little bit at a distance. And so I really appreciate that, and I see a woman, not a youngling who's, completely vulnerable and open to the world as we are when we're young. But I really do believe that you can show up for yourself now in a way that you might not have been able to before. And I think that knowledge, that connection with what it means to show up for yourself now is something that these younger parts of you that are afraid, these feelings of weakness, these memories of hurt, they're desperate for. They want to see, they want to know. Your story is like crying out to you, like, we need you in the way that you're showing up for yourself now. And so I'm wondering, as I'm saying these things, sometimes people can say things about us and it can really connect and be meaningful, and it can kind of jive, and we'd be like, okay. Sometimes people can say things that they're very convicted that would be helpful, or really feel like, man, this is what would be helpful to hear right now, and it just doesn't connect, or maybe it can be like even hurtful. I'm just wondering, like, as I'm saying these things to you, what's happening interiorly? How is this feeling? And I really want to invite your honesty.
I feel like a lot of it does connect. Like, I learned as a kid that I had, like, certain boundaries that I needed to hold up when it came to this kind of stuff. Yeah. And I needed to show up in a certain way, so that, or like love and protection, all that shit. And like, just learning, like, this is how you interact with people.
Yeah.
This is how you hold yourself. This is how you deal with your emotions. Like, very much in, like, my family's super psychoanalytical, like, analyzing everyone and everything. So that was, like, a big way that I learned how to relate to myself and, like, my mental state. And I find that, like, as a kid, there were a lot of things that, like, I thought I should have been able to deal with and, like, handle.
Yeah.
And so part of me is, like, frustrated that I wasn't able to do that.
Of course.
And I've been trying a lot harder recently to try and, like, get better and, like, figure my shit out, so, like, I'm able to, like, show up for myself, and also, like, show up for, like, if I have a kid, I'll be able to show up for them in a way that they need, you know? And that's always been a huge motivator for, like, my own, like, self-work that I've done on myself. And I just, I really, like, when you were speaking, like, it really resonated with me a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that.
That's why I cried.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, oh, well. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, for being here right now. And I was especially touched just as you were talking about, if I have kids. And I I wonder, something else stuck out to me what you were saying. I'm gonna screw up my kids because I'm human, and you will too to some degree, right? So there's a certain amount that's inevitable, but we want to mitigate that to the best way possible.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you did something that, if you didn't show up for your kid in a certain way, and they were hurting, whose responsibility would that be?
I think I think it would be both of ours, both me and my child's.
What about a really little kid?
Well, it would be mine, because I'm the parent. I'm responsible for them. And I think it's really important that before you have a kid or even get married, that you figure yourself out, so you don't perpetuate cycles and stuff. And so I want it to be though because I can't control what happens to my kid, especially outside the home.
Right.
You know, so much stuff goes on outside of it, and even inside of it. Because how can you ever truly know the people you have in your house?
Yeah.
Because everyone's capable of everything at every moment. You know.
Yeah.
And so I just want to be okay enough to the point where I can foster a relationship with my kid where they're able to come to me when they need things and when things happen, and I'm able to give them the resources that they need to deal with it.
Would you feel frustrated at that kid?
I think
there's a natural sense of frustration, but in this stance that you're at right now, if you did something that let your kid down, would it seem right for you to feel frustrated at the little kid?
No.
How would you want to respond?
I think I'd want to respond apologetically if I did something wrong, and try to work it out through him with the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear this part of you that feels frustrated with yourself, the way certain things playing out. This part of you that feels frustrated with yourself. That earlier when you were trying to say, you were saying kind of trying to work on these things, and I feel frustrated with myself that I do it this way or do it that way. I think that part of you that you feel frustrated with deserves the same love, the same tenderness, the same compassion, and the same care that you would show your child. And in fact, that is our responsibility, right? Because we respond to other people the way we learn to respond to ourselves. And so it is a great task to break intergenerational bonds and traumas that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation, and the things that we inherit. It's a big task. But it begins with this compassion that we have for ourselves. Because if we can feel that compassion, if you can learn to feel compassion for this part of you that you're so frustrated with, when you are in that situation and you are feeling a little bit of frustration with a kid, you'll be able to realize, okay, I can respond just the same way that these young parts of me needed me to respond. In a different way, in a helpful way, in a restorative way that I never experienced, but because I can experience it towards myself, I can also share that with my family, and that does change generations.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Here, just before wrapping up again, I want to check in as we're kind of here at the tail end, what's it feel like to be wrapping up? What's it feel like to have kind of shared so much, to have explored maybe different things than you had anticipated, expected at the beginning, to have been up here with me in front of the class? What's this time been like for you?
It's definitely felt weird. It's
It is kind of weird.
It's sort of weird. I'm sitting in front of a bunch of people who I don't really know, and some people I do know.
Yeah. Maybe scarier.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. But I definitely noticed as the session went on, I lost more of that tension and that anxiety in my body.
Yeah.
There's still a part of me that feels kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah. What's that part saying?
We just shared a bunch of info about ourselves to people we don't really know.
Yeah, you did. What's that? What's that part nervous about? You shared a bunch of info to people that you don't really know.
Well, I mean, it's going to change. Obviously, it's going to change how people see me, which is like understandable and normal. But also, it's like the idea that like I think there's going to be a normal amount of like talking about this experience maybe in class with like other people, which is like normal.
Yeah.
And that like doesn't necessarily affect me really, or it shouldn't, because I'm trying. But it's still it's still like slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah. Would that be okay for this part of you, talking about this experience or processing this experience in class?
I think the part of me that focuses on trying to like hold those boundaries and like be like not exactly perfect, but like at least like in control.
Yeah, together.
Yeah, together.
Yeah.
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 I think it's uncomfortable for them,
Yeah.
but I mean, another part of me is like okay with it, because it's like it happened and it's not necessarily a bad thing to be vulnerable in this way.
Yeah.
And that's been something that I'm like trying to focus on right now, is just being okay with being vulnerable with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you are doing it. I want that part of you to know that's a little bit nervous, that if at any point that part wants to veto a conversation in class, or if something might change, or it might be like, hey, honestly, I don't really want to talk about this. It's fine with me. It's absolutely fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't think that'd be weird. I think it's weird that we think it's weird when people are like, I don't want to talk about this. It might feel different, but if there was anything that was covered here that you didn't want to talk about, or if even you didn't want to talk about this experience in or with the class, that would be okay with me, and again, I want you to know I feel like a real fierce protectiveness of what you've shared here, and if you were willing and it felt okay for you to talk in the class or with the class about this experience, I would welcome that. If that didn't feel so good, that'd be perfectly fine too.
Yeah.
But is there anything else of the kind of nervousness or the fear of what just happened that deserves a voice here?
Not necessarily that I can pinpoint at this right now.
Cool.
Because for the most part, I feel pretty at peace with what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel okay with it.
How come?
I think
That's so different.
I know. Yeah.
I think that means we did something right here, and I think it's so important when we do something right, when we do something right in the sense that it's different, that it is a corrective emotional experience, that it is reparative, that it actually fits, that we actually check in and say like, whoa, wait, what was different here, right? What changed here between when you sat down and you were really not, parts of you were not okay, to maybe parts of you still being ambivalent or unsure? Like, what did we get right?
I think part of it was just being forced to like confront those parts of myself in front of a large group of people.
Yeah.
Which like, yay, exposure. Because I think like part of it is just that like it's like when it's like telling me that like it's okay to be in this way, because it's nothing's burning.
Yeah.
I didn't explode.
You didn't explode.
Which is crazy.
You're still here.
What?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably part of it.
And I wonder too, I guess this is just popping up to me, like that you can listen to what these parts that are afraid have to say without being dominated by them.
Yes.
Like you can listen to these feelings of fear, which are like saying, this is a little bit unsafe. And hear that this is a little bit unsafe, but not have to go, like, shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
You're like, that's what Regan, I really admire you in doing this, that you were able to stand on that edge, that growth edge of saying like, okay, scary, but okay, I think I can do it. Okay, I don't have to jump in head first. I can just kind of walk a little bit forward and then see, and we can evaluate and we can talk about that. I really, really admire you doing that here, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
I'm sure the class is very, 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 very grateful too. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up here unless there's something else that should be said.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, would you be open? I guess now I'm putting you on the spot. And so maybe this is an unfair question. Would you like to talk a little bit about what this experience was like for you with the class, or would that feel good? Or would that feel like, nah, rather not right now?
I mean, I could. I'm not sure I have much to say. It was
Okay.
definitely like a weird experience, like
Yeah.
talking about like me and like all of my stuff in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I kind of just and I just looked at you and I just
Good. Yeah.
a little bit, you know.
Would you be open welcoming questions from the class?
Sure.
Would that be okay for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody, again, I would really, I still feel a fierce protectiveness, so don't get Papa Bear angry. But I would really love to welcome some questions, if you guys might have any, about this experience, about anything that really stuck out to you, about any questions you might have for Regan, and what anything felt like, or anything that emerged. So I would just welcome that from you guys. Yes, Nick?
I think during the middle of the conversation, actually throughout the whole conversation, obviously, Professor Dombrowski had a very, very like warm and welcoming tone of voice. Did that help you open up a little more?
Yeah, honestly, like his demeanor made me feel more comfortable in the situation. It was a lot about like how you communicated to me and related to me that made me feel more comfortable with opening up in that way. As well as just like the kind of very neutral tone of everything. Like you didn't react to anything that I said. Well, I mean, not strongly or in like a big like, oh, that's terrible, but just like expressing that like, oh, like that's sad or whatever, but like not in like a. It's not that like you weren't you were affected by what I was saying, but not in a way that made it seem like I should stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what we talk about is creating a secure attachment here, right? Is about creating a safe haven, which is a safe place for you to bring your emotion. But then the way we create the secure base is that we are creating a space that can go and explore. We're going out from this safe haven and exploring the emotion. And so the key, the goal in creating a secure attachment is that we're essentially creating the feeling, not saying it, but the feeling of this is a space that can contain your emotion, whatever it is that comes up, and that can also soothe it. But again, we're not soothing it by kind of saying like, there, it'll be okay. Now maybe sometimes that might actually be necessary, right, with client specificity, but the soothing comes from it being like, oh my gosh, like you said, I didn't explode.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, like now that thing that I was most afraid of happening hasn't happened yet, my heart rate can come down a little bit, right? My body can relax, so glad that was your experience, yeah. Yes.
So I know you volunteered to go in front of the class, if I'm correct, but did you have something in your mind that you were like, okay, I kind of plan on it going this way, like talking about this specific thing, and did it go that way, or was it just?
Not at all. I was gonna bring up not knowing what I wanted to do with my career and talk about that because I was like, oh, that's like everyone's doing that.
Yeah.
Like no one really knows what we're doing with our lives.
Yeah.
And then that didn't happen at all, which is totally fine. But
And this is something that's so important to our work. What was more important to talk about?
the process and like how like I was in the moment.
Yeah. If we didn't talk about this, what it was like for you to show up here in front of the class, whatever we would have been talking about in your career would have been filtered through what schemas?
Yeah.
What schemas would it have been filtered through? What parts of you would have been kind of filtering whatever we were talking about for your career?
It would be like, what's something that's generally like other people experience?
Yeah.
Like what's something that communicates like enough vulnerability to the point where it's like, oh yeah, like I'm nervous about these things and I don't know about these things, but also like I can still hold my ground almost. And, like I'm still like able to like whatever, you know? Yeah, and like what would be socially appropriate in the moment.
Yeah, and so if we were gonna dive into that, this schema, this part of you that's saying, hey, I can't let anybody see weakness, I can't let anybody see vulnerability, what we would have been doing is we would have actually been saying here in our work together, if we were gonna be continuing, right? Here in our work together, it's okay for you to keep using this schema of I can't be vulnerable ever, and I'm gonna hold up walls, right? When we bring it to the process, what we're doing is we're saying, essentially what we're exploring is, what is the painful and problematic thing that whatever we talk about is going to be filtered through for you, right? Like, what's the emotional schema and structure that whatever we talk about, whether it's career, whether it's relationships, whether it's faith, whether it's whatever it could be, that's going to be filtered through this. And what we're saying is like, hey, as we're getting started here, like, can we explore the filter? Like, would it be safe? Could we name, like, what's it like? This is why this question is so important for us. What's it like for you to be here right now? This question is so important. Yeah. The process, if we're really true to the process will always bring us to these things that are actually way more important, that feel way scarier to go to. But our goal is not to force people into exposure of the things that they don't want to face, right? That's actually a problematic process. It's to welcome, to identify, and to explore. And the reason I can really say, whether it's here in front of the class in demonstration or to somebody in therapy, that like, hey, if you don't want to talk about something, that's actually totally okay. I mean that 100%. I stand behind that. Because if you're going to say, yes, I don't want to talk about that, I would probably ask you, what would happen if we did? And then we can explore what are the consequences that you're afraid of happening. And it's actually more important for us to talk about the consequences of what you're afraid of happening and really address, are those legitimate fears or are they erroneous? Your fears of vulnerability were legitimate, right? They weren't faulty. Now, maybe the extremeness of what those fears means was exaggerated, right? Parts that say, I can't be vulnerable at all, right? It's like, well, maybe you can be vulnerable a little bit. You showed that here. But that's different. And so when we explore, I just lost my train of thought, but when you say you don't want to talk about something, if we're trusting and sticking with the process, then if we explore what the process is that's saying, I don't want to talk about this thing, that is where we need to be in the conversation. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, John Paul.
I don't know how to ask this question, but pretty much like when you were like going through like the process, is it like at each like whatever Regan said, like are you always like seeing all the paths you could take and what you could say? Or like are you just like that so many times that like just like the next things like naturally say?
Yeah. So when I am my best, I am here and now wherever here and now is. When I fall into traps, myself as a therapist is when, and there's an artful and a skillful way to do this, is when somebody says something sometimes I get attached to things that I think are really important, but that's really about me and my story and not about the person that I'm sitting with. And so earlier you said something, and we went back to it. I don't know if it was, do you remember? I don't know if it was that you said you felt, it was about weakness.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Maybe it was, and we had you said something about weakness, and Regan you were starting to feel some affect. You were starting to feel some emotion that was flowing up here. And what frequently happens, right, is then we kind of say like, okay, like I'm going to get away from this. And so we kind of feel some affect, and then parts of us kind of show up to take us away from that point. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I guess I could kind of say, when I feel emotions, I put a bookmark there. And if after a certain period of time, it would feel like the person is getting farther away from the bookmark, I would say, hey, like, could we slow down? You said this word, weakness. And I heard you say that word, and it just like packed such a punch. I felt it. Can you tell me what that word meant for you? that's an artful way, I think, when maybe I'm at my best, that we can kind of go back to things that are important. But you'll be a better therapist if you let go of those. That's, I think, maybe a later point of development. What I used to do is kind of like exactly what you're saying. What I used to do, and maybe sometimes do when I'm not my best as a therapist, is think, we could go here, 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 we could go here. That's that kind of like internal self-monitoring of like, what should I do? But I think when we're really effective, we are with the other person. And when we're connected to the emotion, they tell us where we need to go. Not explicitly through words of we need to go there, but when they start feeling, you as a therapist want to be able to actually be in tune and feel with them, so as to say like, oh, that's important. I want to understand that better. Like, bring me in on that, if that makes sense. Yes?
You still had like she had the goal of like talking about her career, but you still had like the goal of talking about the process that's like the block to the affecting the process,
Always.
which is like the process that you follow.
Yes, it's the process over content. Yeah, so my sense, because of this situation, was that no matter what we were going to talk about, it was probably going to it would feel more important for us to talk about what it'll be like for you to sit here. Now, you might have said, honestly, it feels okay. And I'm not really nervous about what they think, because screw all those people, I don't care about their opinions, right? Or you might have just said, honestly, I just feel safe, and I that's fine. Like, and if you would have said that, well, I trust you. I would take that. I would take that at face value, and I would say, okay, so what would you like to begin talking about? But when I asked about, like, hey, that question that's so important, what's it like for you to be here right now? It was clear that what it was like for you to be here right now was the most important thing for us to talk about. Because you being here right now, in the story of your life, held a central significance because it was tapping into something that felt perhaps like a similarly vulnerable situation to other situations that were actually threatening. So we needed to talk about that and honor that. Yeah, Mina.
One more question towards you.
Yes.
When you, as a therapist, like from day-to-day life, do you always have to act like you're a therapist, even when you're not in the room? Like when you said it's okay for someone to say, I don't want to talk about this. Let's say that your partner or your friend told you, oh, I don't want to talk about this. How would you react? Should you react as a therapist, or do you react as you?
I'm an excellent therapist when I don't act like one and I show up as John Paul. Right? I honestly not trying to act like a therapist here. Now, honestly, probably actually today here in front of the class, I probably was. You guys were probably seeing a filter of me, of like what I think I should be like as a therapist, right? But if there were any moments that really just felt authentic, if there were any moments that felt like, oh, John Paul's just like talking like he would talk to me if he saw me on the side of the street, like those are the moments when I'm at my best as a therapist. So when we learn not to filter ourselves, you know, in therapist voice or not therapist voice, you don't need a therapist voice. You don't. You don't. You need to care and listen and do that intentionally. Now, granted, that being said, I have different responsibilities towards different people in my life, and other people have different responsibilities towards me. So if my friend said, hey, I don't want to talk about it, well, that's one thing. If my wife says I don't want to talk about it, but I'm like, hey, I think we need to talk about it, that might be a little bit different. But I try to not see being a therapist as a role. I try to see being a therapist as me being an authentic, healthy person.
Because as of right now, when you guys were talking, I was putting myself in your shoes.
Yeah.
Like, what if someone came up to me with like such stuff?
Yeah.
I felt like I was gonna start tearing up and just start crying with the client, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you're not supposed to do that.
Well, I cried. I mean, I don't know. I had some tears here today. And people on the street, you know, like might say something, I might cry with them. You know, I think we are not supposed to do that as a stupid rule, and I don't know who came up with it. But like, we are human and we feel things, and everybody has something that's worth crying about. And you know, there have been times in class where especially in the early classes, sometimes I'll tear up because I'm like, man, I'm just so excited to be here with you all, and maybe I'm a little bit nervous and there's a lot going on for me, and when the feelings are here, they kind of just well up and my eyes get a little bit teary. I cry every day. I cry every day with my clients. This morning, I cried with a part of myself that, you know, I realized that there was a part of me that really wanted to connect with a colleague and wanted to do this because, like, wanted to say, like, okay, well, if I know this theory and I can teach them this theory, then I'm going to be able to connect with them. And I realized that this part of me went back to like 7th and 8th grade when I went from homeschool to I was in the school system and I was at the lunch table, and I just so desperately wanted to connect with the peers at the lunch table, and everybody was picking on everybody because 8th grade boys are just generally awful in behavior and treatment towards each other. It's a sad thing. That I realized that there's this part of me that learned, like, well, if I can talk about the thing that they're interested in, or if I can make the joke that they think they're funny, I feel connection. And I was like, oh, like, that's so sad, right? It's sad that there's a little part of me that's like still stuck in 8th grade, trying to win the approval of a bunch of snot-nosed peers, right? Who are now all my like best friends, for the record, like, and I love them. But like, it's sad, right? Like, so I think one of the things is when we can be authentically connected to our emotions, crying doesn't have to be a threat. Feeling for my friend doesn't have to be a threat. Feeling for somebody who I pass on the street doesn't have to be a threat. Feeling for somebody that I meet at a bar doesn't have to be a threat. Now, there might be times where I'm feeling something and I might have to tell them, you know, I really think you should see a therapist. And I've said this to somebody recently. I said, you know, I really care about you. And because I care about you, I'm saying this very straightforwardly. I can't give you what you need right now. I'm not able to provide what you want from me. I want you to know what you can expect and what you can't expect. And you can't expect my care in that way right now because I just don't have the availability. I can give you a referral to another therapist, a therapist that I think will treat you very well, but I want to be very clear about what you can expect from me, because I don't want to recreate a pattern of somebody thinking, well, John Paul really cares, so I'll go to him. John Paul really cares, so I'll go to him. And I don't really have the availability, and this person keeps coming back, and they feel like I keep letting them down, and I feel like they're asking me for something that I can't give them. So rather than playing that dynamic out, I'm just going to say it. So there is a need for boundaries and understanding, like, how can I extend myself and how can I not extend myself? But I think that's being able to speak to what the relationship is and isn't at the moment that is happening, not necessarily like censoring our own emotions. Yeah. Long answer to a good question. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
I don't know how we can do with someone who doesn't want to talk about his issue.
Yeah.
Especially someone who is shy or very, very hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, 2 points. One, but I think probably this would be a better question for another day because I know we're here at the tail end. But the first point is I'd be very interested in kind of what your sense is for that, for like people who are resistant, the types of people who would be shy or don't want to talk about their issues. But secondly, you can't. You can't force somebody to care. the way you welcome somebody who doesn't want to talk into talking is to not force them, right? So when you try to force someone who doesn't want to talk, that's just going to make them withdraw more. The two things that you'd want to do is give permission to say, hey, you know, if you don't want to talk, and I've done this before. I went an entire session. I started out and I said something. When the entire 50 minutes, we didn't talk, right? It was with a young boy who was had just been recently incarcerated for violating his parole and smoking marijuana, and so he was in the jail for a stint. And he showed up. I don't want to talk. And I said, all right, we don't have to talk. I'm going to sit here for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to check in 10 minutes because I don't want you to feel like totally like I'm forgetting you, but I'm just going to sit here for 10 minutes in silence because I want to respect what you have to say. I'll check in 10 minutes, and we'll go from there. I sat there. I just kind of meditated. Right? Just did some mindfulness. In 10 minutes, I checked with him. I said, hey, 10 minutes ago, you said you didn't want to talk. I told you I'd give some space, so I just wanted to do the same thing. He said, I said, all right, we'll go another 10 minutes. And we did that 4 times. The last 5 minutes, he started saying all sorts of stuff, right? And sometimes it goes that way, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it'll just end. But what I was able to communicate to him was, I respect your autonomy, and I respect that I can't actually control your behavior. I'm not interested in controlling your behavior. I'm interested in helping you. If you want the help, I'm here. If you don't want the help, I don't have to get defensive and threatened and upset and controlling about it. And I think that's what's very healing in those experiences. Yeah. So we didn't get to you guys practicing on your own, but I'm very grateful, Regan, for you being here. And we will pick up on Thursday with chapter 4.